Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCullum, and today we are going to take a look at the only example of the Landstad 1900. This isn't just the only surviving example, it's actually the only example that was ever manufactured. And this is, I think, about the closest gun that you could get to an actual semi-automatic revolver. So this has a detachable 6-round magazine, but it also has a revolver cylinder in it. But it's only a 2-chamber revolver cylinder. This was manufactured for Norwegian military trials in 1900. It was tested in 1901, and we're going to go through all of it. So let's start with a brief bit about the inventor. His name was Halvard Folkestad Landstad. He was educated at the Kongsberg Arsenal as well as Technical College in Kristiana, Norway. That is now Oslo, Norway. And he designed this in the late 1890s. He patented it all over the world. There's a Norwegian patent, but then there are also a bunch of European patents, Belgian, French, British, etc. And the basic concept here was this idea that a semi-automatic pistol is the better, like that's the modern good solution for military firepower, but having a round in the chamber is fundamentally dangerous. And the Landstad system was a way to get a semi-automatic pistol that also was carried without a round in the chamber, but ready to fire only with the pull of a trigger. So the reason it has a magazine and a cylinder is that the magazine automatically feeds a round into the bottom chamber of the cylinder, and when you pull the trigger, it rotates the cylinder a full 180 degrees, which puts that round in line with the barrel and the striker, and then fires it, and then automatically ejects the case. When that cylinder has rotated, it's automatically put a new cartridge into the bottom chamber. And so it's essentially a double action only, simple blowback, semi-automatic revolver. As long as you consider revolver to qualify this as, even though it only has 2 chambers in it. So the concept makes sense. Now, of course, the concept makes sense. There are much better ways to deal with the potential safety issues of having a round under a loaded striker, namely, well, all sorts of systems that we use today, but this was developed in 1900. This was done at the very beginning of Norway's search for a semi-automatic pistol. The real substantial trials would start in 1908, but we'll talk about those in a moment. First, let's get a closer look at how this works, and I'll take it apart for you. Today's video is sponsored by Headstamp Publishing, the premier publisher of firearms reference books. Fantastically researched and absolutely gorgeously photographed. Whether it is a small monograph on something like Who Invented the Wheel Gun, or a full-size reference publication on something like French military rifles, Japanese swords, Hungarian Kalashnikovs, or a wider subject such as small arms of World War II overviews, we have something for everybody over at headstamppublishing.com. So check out our website. The link is in the description text below. Find the coolest book you think is on there and order it today. All right, so here's the gun. Chances are decent you've seen pictures of this. It is a full-size pistol. Like in the hand, that's a full-size service pistol right there. The only markings on it are these really cool engravings on the right-hand side. System Landstad Model number 1 and 1900. To remove the magazine, I'm going to flip that little locking lever forward, and then I lift up the base of the grip panel, and voila, on the inside is our magazine. This is chambered for the 7.5mm Nagant cartridge. That was the standard revolver cartridge that the Norwegian military was using in 1900 in their Nagant revolvers, so that's what it was chambered for. Holds 6 rounds here, and we can see the follower right there. That's gonna drop down. So you load 6 rounds in there, and then can slide that in at the top, drop it down, lock it in place. The patent for this actually includes a discussion of the magazine being hinged, so that you can open it and get some sort of quick speed loader to recharge the magazine. It also talks about the magazine being disconnected when it's empty, allowing you to single load the gun and continue firing. Those features do not appear to have actually made it into model number 1. They're talked about in the patent, but they're not present on the gun. Now, when you load this, the first round is going to go in right there into the bottom cylinder, bottom chamber of the cylinder, and then this is our charging handle, and it's going to cycle back this bolt. So there's the bolt. It is a simple blowback pistol. So once there's a round in here, the only thing holding this in place when it fires is the mass and the spring behind it. Give this gun the benefit of the doubt a little bit. It is a very old, tired sample. It's 123 years old as of this filming, and it blew up in testing, basically. So anyway, when I pull the trigger, it's going to rotate this 180 degrees, drop the striker, fire, and then this is going to cycle back. It ejects the empty cartridge, kicks it out of the gun. The trigger reset spring is not functioning. So then, after firing one round, you're back into this position. The top chamber is empty. The bottom chamber has the next round from the magazine pushed into it. And when I pull the trigger again, you can see we get that really quick rotation of the cylinder. And it fires a second time, resets the striker. Do this a little bit slower here. Click, just like that. So, as I said, what you get functionally is a magazine-fed gun that requires nothing except a trigger pull, basically a double action only trigger pull, and it's striker fired, but you never have a live cartridge sitting under the striker. All right, now to disassemble this, I'm going to take the magazine out, and then I'm going to take out the magazine capture lever here. I don't actually have to do this to disassemble the gun, but it will fall out if I don't, so I'm just going to take it out on my own. That allows the butt plate to come off, and then we can take out the other grip panel. The next step in disassembly is to remove this little side panel. So this lifts up, and it just slides down off of that peg. So that comes out. This is just essentially a retaining plate for the hand, and the hand is a fantastic weird piece. We'll get to that in just a moment. With that retaining plate off, I can then take off this rear stirrup on the gun. So that lifts up and comes off. Next, I need to take off this side plate, but we have a little catch here holding it in place. There we go. So we're going to slide that up and off. This pin right there locks the side plate into the gun. So with that off, I can then lift this up. There we go. So, all right, and inside we have these beautifully jeweled pieces here. So this is the sear right here, and this is the disconnector. So if we look at this up a little closer, that right there is our striker. So I can hold it in place. There we go. So that's the striker. It comes back and it gets held behind this notch. So when I push the trigger bar up, that drops down, which releases the sear, and then when the bolt comes back over this, it pulls it back and resets the sear. So that's how it's semi-auto. Next up, I'm going to unscrew the charging handle. There we go, that comes out. That's the main spring. And then I can push the bolt back and take the whole bolt assembly out of the gun. This, by the way, is the little spring-loaded finger that is going to push around from the magazine up into the bottom of the cylinder. So there's that little finger right there. When the bolt comes forward, that is held, that's pushed down by a spring. It's going to hit the rim of a cartridge and shove it into the bottom chamber. When it comes back, because it's spring-loaded, it's pushed up and out of the way so it can slide back over the loaded magazine. And then we have our extractor on top here, firing pin spring, or striker spring, I should say. All right, if we take a close look at the bolt here, you can see what appears to be a seam right there and another one right there. And we'll talk about the testing in a minute, but that is where the bolt broke in half when they started shooting it for testing. By the way, one other neat little feature, we've got this hole on the bottom of the frame that is actually there so that you can use a rod to push out a stuck case if you have one. So you can take the mag out, put in a rod there, and it'll pop the empty case back into this recess. At this point, the cylinder just drops out because the operating rod doubles as the cylinder axis right there. We have two camming lugs on the back of the cylinder. There's really nothing going on at the front. Now I can rotate the trigger guard 90 degrees. It comes off. The trigger is going to come off right there. This is our cylinder stop, and I believe this is also the trigger reset spring, which isn't really quite functional, but it comes up through that slot right there to act as a cylinder lock, to hold the cylinder in position while the trigger is engaged and the gun is fired. And then lastly, on this side, we have the hand. So this is a hand with a pair of curved links on it. This lug on the trigger engages with this slot in the hand, like so, like that. So when the trigger pushes back, it pushes the hand up to rotate the cylinder. And if I put this back in the gun, you can see right there, you can see when I push this lever up, you've got that curved hand that comes up and goes like a full 180 degrees in order to rotate the cylinder all the way around. So it's going to hit on one of those two lugs and just rotate it a full, well, half a revolution. Now, it's particularly impressive to recognize that at this point, this frame has no further parts that can actually be removed. So I have to assume some of these parts were threaded, pinned, well, threaded together. The barrel obviously had been inserted as a separate component, but some of this must have been welded or brazed together, or else it's one of the most intricate pieces of single item manufacturing like I've ever seen. That is incredibly impressive. Well, on one hand, it's incredibly impressive. On the other hand, it's completely impractical to manufacture as a military firearm because it's just such a complicated frame assembly there. All right, there is the whole thing. There is the only Landstad 1900 ever made, field stripped for you. All right, so in 1908, Norway would begin to really more seriously look for an automatic pistol. And the guns they liked were Colts. They actually tested, they got in like 24 Colt 1900s, tested the bejesus out of them, wanted more, couldn't get more, so they ended up making a couple of their own Colt copies. These competed against a couple of different domestic Norwegian designs. Colt ended up being the best, and this ultimately would lead to the adoption of what's today known as the Kongsberg model of 1914, a very slight variation on the Colt 1911. But those are all pistols for later videos. The Landstad here comes from a slightly earlier era. So this was tested in 1900, or I'm sorry, it was tested in 1901 by the Norwegian military. It wasn't part of a formal trials program. It was semi-automatic pistols are kind of the new thing out there, and we're willing to look at whatever is available. So Landstad took his design to the military, his patents, his drawings, and suggested basically that the military should help pay him to make one of these guns to test for military use. And the military looked at his patents and was intrigued by it and thought it was worthwhile. And so they did, in fact, provide the funding, and the gun was built because of reasons, partially at Landstad's own shop, and partially at the main army arsenal. And the army paid for the materials, they developed it, built this one first example, and then in 1900 they did some testing on it. But the testing didn't last very long because they only fired either 5 or 6 rounds out of it. So basically one magazine worth, and then the bolt sheared in half. So it was repaired, as you saw, it was repaired at the time, but that was it. Even with those 5 or 6 rounds, the gun had some problems feeding, it had some problems extracting, and then it broke. So not like, it'd be hard to have a less successful test without actually injuring anyone on the test committee. And so this never went anywhere. After that test, the military was done with it. They weren't interested. Like, Landstad talked about doing an improved version, but it never happened. The military wasn't interested, and they would later go on to their more serious trials pistol program. Anyway, a very big thanks to Jan here in Norway for giving me the opportunity to take a look at this. It currently resides happily in Norway, having returned. Actually, quick bit of backstory on it. When Landstad died in the 1950s, his widow actually donated it to the British NRA. They held it for a little while. They eventually sold it at auction in the 1970s, and it came into the possession of one Jeffrey Sturgis, very famous collector of early, funky, cool handguns like this. And he kept it for quite some time until he sold it to its current owner, and now it has returned back to Norway. Anyway, big thanks to Jan for giving me access to it to film for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.